challenges that come with a workforce, growing business, sometimes growing organisation, but they've decided to outsource that to Harrison's. We have a recruitment service and we have an online subscription service. My HR experts have got a range of tools and templates and advice that you can receive. So that's a little bit about us. To today's topic. So today we are talking about resolving conflicts in the office, methods and techniques, effective conflict resolution techniques that you can apply in the workplace. So workplace conflicts, like we said, they arise due to varying perspectives of individuals, maybe competition for resources, or often, as we see, personality clashes. If the conflict is not addressed, they can impede productivity, they can harm team morale, and even lead to turnover. If they escalate and become a dispute, complaints, that's when it becomes more difficult. So we really want to be trying to identify and deal with conflict as it arises. So this webinar introduced attendees to proven methods and techniques to effectively resolve these conflicts and to try and promote a harmonious office environment. The modern workplace is a very diverse environment with people of all different ages and backgrounds working together. Conflicts, both minor and major in nature, are bound to occur. This means that employers, leaders such as yourselves need to be flexible with their conflict resolution strategies because each individual and each situation is different. So one size does not fit all due to a range of, demographics, positions, your values, behaviours, expectations of people. Common issues that employers and HR managers have to face include personality clashes, perceived lack of recognition, validation often, disagreements, might be about salaries, might be around distribution of work. More serious issues, which is when it leads more to a dispute and really goes beyond conflict resolution, is more around that sexual harassment and bullying. They're more difficult to resolve and really we'll talk a little bit about, but that is something that more would lead towards a workplace investigation rather than conflict resolution if it escalates. The best way to avoid disputes of any nature is to create an open and engaged workforce, a workplace where everyone feels comfortable and respected and they can raise their conflicts and their differences and we can discuss them. Conflict between employees, like I said, it's inevitable. Each person is different. So that is our topic for today. I've got the agenda up there. So let's start. So understanding the nature of conflict. So let's just start with what is conflict. So it's really when two or more people desire goals which they perceive as attainable by one or the other, but not both. It's really what it's about. It's a general state of negative feeling between two people. And I just made a note here as well. It is different to a dispute. So a conflict is as different in beliefs around two people. But that is difference between a dispute, which is more a matter of fact and is often more where it will lead to an investigation or potentially some sort of performance disciplinary issue. But that is different to a conflict. Conflicts are only, if you decided to investigate a conflict, it's only exacerbates by doing an investigation, whereas disputes are investigated because they're about facts, not about feelings. Okay, so in terms of the ABC of conflict, there's often an event, there's a conflict, something had happened between the two people. It's about a clash of beliefs, and there's consequences that come out of that. So you will all know, I'm going to talk about the source of conflict, but I'm sure you've seen them all in your workplace. So this is just some of the conflicts that may exist or maybe the reason for conflict. I won't read through them, but I'm sure that you've seen them. I think, one that we see definitely is really that personality clashes, which often I think gets confused with the workplace bullying or harassment, but it's about two people that have different personalities, different work temperaments, and that clashes in terms of how work is performed. But there's a whole other raft of reasons why why conflict may exist in the workplace or come about. So the impacts of conflict, which again, I'm sure that you all have seen. Is people can engage in that win-lose type behaviour. Can I just, for anyone that's just joined, if we just can turn off our cameras and our microphones, it'd be great. So people engage in a win-lose encounter. We will talk about different styles very soon as well. All parties lose as the pre-existing relationship is damaged or destroyed. And those long-lasting negative impacts can remain grudges, which can, I'm sure we've seen, is that permanent damage to relationships that can happen, and the impacts in terms of productivity and morale, people leaving, that the feel in the workplace that can create. And worst case scenario, it also does go to dispute, and it becomes a much more complex issue than what it needs to be if we'd picked up on the issue or the conflict in the beginning. Okay, so as a leader, HR manager, whatever position you may be in, there are a number of early signs of conflict, and I'm sure you have others that you could add to this list, but some things to look out for, and just to dig in terms of trying to identify what is the cause that these things are happening. It could be a decrease in productivity, quality issues in terms of quality of work, higher turnover, so people leaving more than what is normal for your organisation, excessive absenteeism. We often see that if someone is going through something, whether it's conflict or something else at the workplace, is the absenteeism increases. Dysfunctional meetings, so no clear agenda, lack of thoughtful dialogue, people aren't paying attention. Anxiety and stress. So in a survey on work-related stress, 2 of the top 4 cases were associated with conflict in regard to workplace stress. The top 4 included deadlines, 55%, interpersonal relationships, 53%, staff management, 50%, and dealing with issues, problems that arrive, 49%. So a huge amount there around conflict in the workplace. Increased complaints, or the types of complaints that are coming through may not always be around the conflict, so you've got to try and work out what the underlying issue is there. Changes in interactions with others, that might be odd comments that are being said that you need to pick up on. Avoidance behaviours, short responses to questions. So just looking out for these things is important, and thinking about how can you resolve conflict, and through maybe better communication, maybe better questions, to think about how we can resolve this conflict. And so we're identifying it right at the beginning, because often even the people involved aren't seeing it, or possibly they're reluctant to do anything about it. So we want to be picking up on that as much as possible. Okay, so this is a model, Thomas Kilmann, conflict behaviours. I'm assuming some of you have probably seen it before. So the Thomas Kilmann, it's an instrument. It's designed to measure a person's behaviour in conflict situations. Conflict situations are those in which concerns of 2 people appear to be incompatible, like we said at the beginning. In such conflict situations, we can describe an individual's behaviour along 2 dimensions, as you'll see on this slide here. Assertiveness, the extent to which the person attempts to satisfy their own concerns, and 2 is the cooperativeness, so the extent to which the person attempts to satisfy the other person's concerns. So the 2 underlying dimensions of human behaviour, assertiveness and cooperativeness, can then be used to define 5 different modes for responding to conflict situations. The first one we'll talk about is competing. So competing is, as we can see, assertive and uncooperative. So an individual pursues their own concerns at the other's expense. This is a power-oriented mode in which you use whatever power seems appropriate to win your own position. Competing means standing up for your rights, defending a position which you believe is correct, or simply they just want to win. I'm sure we've known it, we've seen it. Accommodating, on the other hand, on the opposite side, is unassertive and cooperative. So the complete opposite of the competing. So when accommodating, the individual neglects their own concerns to satisfy the concerns of the other person. There's an element of self-sacrifice in this mode. Accommodating might take the form of selfless generosity or charity, obeying another person's order even when they prefer not to, or yielding to another's point of view. In the bottom left corner is avoiding, is unassertive and uncooperative. So this person would rather just put their head in the sand, neither pursues their own concerns nor those of the other individual. Thus, they don't want to deal with conflict. Avoiding might take the form of diplomatically sidestepping an issue, postponing an issue, procrastination, until a better time, or simply withdrawing from a threatening situation. Top right, we've got collaborating is both assertive and cooperative, complete opposite of avoiding. Collaborating involves an attempt to work with others to find some solution that fully satisfies their both concerns. It means digging into an issue to pinpoint the underlying needs and wants of both individuals. Collaborating between two persons might take the form of exploring a disagreement to learn from each other's insight, or trying to find a creative solution to an interpersonal problem. And then right in the middle, we have compromising. So it's moderate on the assertiveness and the cooperativeness. The objective here is to find some expedient, mutually acceptable solution that partially satisfies both parties. It falls intermediate between competing and accommodating. Compromising gives up more than competing, but less than accommodating. Likewise, it addresses an issue more directly than avoiding, who's not addressing the problem, but does not explore it in as much depth as the collaborating. In some situations, compromising might mean splitting the difference between the two positions, exchanging concessions, or seeking a quick middle ground solution. So these 5 styles, each of us is capable of using all 5. None of us can be characterised as having a single style of dealing with conflict. As you probably know, there'll be some issues that you're more passionate about than others, or that are more important to you, that you will take a different way of handling the conflict. But certain people, maybe most of us, will use some modes better or more often than others, and therefore tend to rely on those modes more heavily than what other people do, whether because it's a temperament or a learned practice that they have. Your conflict behaviour in the workplace is therefore a result of both your personal predispositions and the requirement of the situation in which you find yourself. So the Thomas Kilmann instrument is designed to measure your use of conflict handling modes across a wide variety of group and organisational settings. So there is a website and there is a questionnaire if you want to do it. Might be interesting. Okay, so just to look at this, I'm going to take a little bit further. Maybe it's a bit more interesting to use with your teams. They use an animal to talk about each of these. So we can see that we've got the shark on the competing, the owl on collaborating, the fox for compromising, the turtle or the tortoise, some might say, in avoiding, and the teddy in accommodating. So I'll talk a little bit about those. Okay, so just putting those on as a summary from what we've previously talked about. So the shark is really that competing. It's a win-lose arrangement, win at all costs. Collaboration is win-win. Creative problem solving so that both parties have a win. Accommodating is a lose-win, I lose, you win. Building a friendly relationship while not wanting to assert myself. Avoiding is lose-lose because no one's addressing the issue. And in the middle, we've got the compromise, which is, that partial win, partial lose, split the difference between us. So I'm going to quickly go through these styles. I'm going through these styles because I think it's important for you to consider in conflict resolution, where is each person coming to? What approach do we use in different situations? What approach do I use in situations? And how do we appeal to people if this is where they're coming from in each of the situations to help better resolve conflict at work? So just to talk through these. So the turtle is the avoiding. So it's, just put a few of these up, yes. So low value on the goal, and low value on the relationship. So examples, if someone was talking about an issue at work with someone and they started to argue together, the first person, being the turtle, they might switch topics or just leave the conversation to avoid it. Another example, a person who always avoids the topic of disciplining their employees might change the subject to try to avoid talking about it altogether. They may not want to even be around people when the topic's discussed. So turtles believe it is hopeless to try and resolve conflict and avoid people and issues that may cause conflict. The turtle feels helpless in reaching personal goals and refuses to cooperate with others in reaching theirs. So these are some attributes. It's really a lose-lose situation. Next, we have the competitive shark. So shark, competitive, high value on the goal and low value on the relationship. So example, someone would rather be right than do the right thing. They might just want to win the argument. A person gets too defensive about their ideas or opinions and becomes combative when facing objections or disagreements. So sharks force others to accept their way, oblivious to needs or feelings of others. Sharks believe conflicts are settled by one person winning and one person losing. Sharks want to win and will fight at all costs. So situations where this may be appropriate is if the issue is trivial. If it's a speed by decision that's needed, if there's an unpopular course of action that is implemented, necessary to overcome some assertive other individuals, an unfavourable decision by the other party that may be costly to the shark. But situations that it's not definitely, inappropriate, when it's a complex issue and you really need everyone to work together, express ideas and really look at the conflict from both sides, is where it's inappropriate. If the issue is not important to you, then you're not going to fight for it. Both parties are equally powerful. Decisions not have to be made quickly, and you have the time to collaborate, discuss. And when you're working with your team who possess a high degree of competence, you're not having to force opinions on them and your way of doing it. Next, we have the teddy, who is accommodating. So low value on the goal and high value on the relationship. So just a bit more on the teddy. So it's a lose-win. Lose for me is the teddy and a win for you in the other person involved in the conflict. So as an example, if a co-worker has to skip work due to unavoidable circumstance, the person, the teddy, would agree to cover their shift even if they are not friends with their co-worker. Another example, if a project needs completing, the teddy may do whatever it takes to make this happen. The teddy bear soothes. More than anything else, teddies want others to like and accept them. Teddies are possibly too quick to accommodate others and to ignore their own needs and feelings because they believe asking others to meet personal needs will harm the relationship. The outcome isn't important, the relationship is more important to the teddy. Conflict with this type might feel like when teddy talks, everything sounds just fine. When you talk, they're listening and agreeing with everything you say. And I'm sure we all know some teddies for the teddy situation. So situations when you can use the teddy approach is you believe that you may be wrong. The issue is more important to the other party. You're willing to give up something in exchange for something from the other party in the future. You're in a position of weakness. Preserving relationship is really important in the situation. So where it's inappropriate is the issue is really important to you and you believe or you believe that you are right and the other party the other party is wrong, or definitely, if they are acting unethically or illegally, then it's not the appropriate style to come from. Next, we have the fox, who is compromising. So have moderate value on the goal and moderate value on the relationship. So examples, two companies might cooperate on marketing efforts when they both want more customers. So part win and part lose. You're not getting perfectly targeted strategy, but you still got a benefit. If your boss is offering you a raise, but you don't want to give up too much of your salary, you can say that you would be willing to compromise. So seeking something in the middle. Fox is compromise. A fox will give up some goals if you'll give up something of yours. The fox is similar to the owl, but less optimistic about conflict bringing an improved relationship. Conflict with this type might feel like when foxes are talking, they're diplomatic but persuasive. When you talk, the fox is trying hard to figure out what's the compromise here. So situations where this is appropriate, goals of parties are mutually exclusive, parties are equally powerful, consensus can't be reached, integrating or dominating style is not successful, temporary solution to complex problem is needed. Where it's inappropriate, one party is more powerful, problem is complex enough to need problem-solving approach. So we, by compromising, we would be underestimating the level of discussion and problem-solving that's required. And finally is our owl. So our owl is the collaborator, so high on value and high on the relationship. So examples, if a person is offended by an idea but can see that there are implications for other people, then the person will work with them to come up with alternatives that are mutually agreed upon. Another example, if someone is saddled with too much work, they will discuss the issue with their employer and try to find a middle ground instead of resigning. Looking for a win-win. I missed that actually, win-win. Owls confront openly and fairly. They're optimistic about conflict and that it's going to be beneficial to all. Owls are committed to their personal goals and to other goals. Owls begin discussion by identifying openly the wishes of both and are never satisfied until a solution is found that satisfies both parties. Conflict with an owl might feel like when an owl talks, they may come on strong, but when you talk, they are listening carefully and sympathetically. Situations where appropriate is definitely in a complex issue, a high stakes issue. Commitment is needed from both parties to make it successful in terms of an implementation. There's time available for problem solving. One party alone cannot solve the problem. Where it's inappropriate, if the task or problem is simple, immediate decision is required, other parties aren't concerned about the outcome, and other parties do not have problem-solving skills. So that's our conflict resolution styles that you can do the assessment for. So that gives us the definition around what conflict is, different styles, and therefore the background to help with conflict resolution as leaders and HR people within our organisations. So basic principles of conflict resolution. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the 3-step conflict resolution. So in summary, so first of all, we listen to understand. So the way that we do it is that we meet, and there's normally 2 parties, we meet with each person on their own about the conflict to understand what their issue is. We ask and we listen. Really, really important in conflict resolution to listen, because we want to understand the issue and try and find out what the underlying concern is, which is often something emotional or more deep-seated. So ask about and listen to their story about how the conflict started and how it has escalated. Talk to them about what they have done to manage the conflict and discuss how they think the conflict could be resolved. Importantly, ask questions and listen to the response. Really listen. Most often it is something, like I said, it is often something that is, means something more, that's offended their beliefs, something more emotional. So get to the core of the problem. Ask these questions to deal with a workplace conflict. So when you're dealing, and this is in the individual meetings, what's happened? How have you been affected? And what can we do to repair any hurt or harm? So important to meet with the individual, have the discussion, listen, don't do all the talking, and ask these open-ended questions to really seek to understand. So these questions are based on the restorative model of justice that works from the approach that when things go wrong, it's an opportunity to learn from our mistakes and minimise the possibility of the behaviour recurring. So that's what we're trying to do in a conflict situation. It's, like I say, it's different from a dispute or misconduct or performance issues. It's conflict, and we're looking at how we can learn. We want people to be raising their concerns. We want to create an environment where people feel comfortable doing this. So it's about really listening and seeking to understand and having a better way moving forward. So next what we do is to then meet with the two individuals together. So meet to discuss the key issues. So organise a meeting of yourself and the two people in a neutral and confidential environment. Facilitate a meeting to raise the key issues and reach an acceptable outcome. Key steps of the meeting. It needs to be private, needs to be confidential. We need to allow the opportunity for each party to talk and be very clear on the agreed solutions. We're going to talk more about that in the next slide. And then the third step is hold follow-up or review meetings. It can't just be a one-off meeting, one-off resolution, because it needs to go back. There'll be behaviour changes most likely, or different actions that come out of it. We need to make sure that we check in on that. So post the meeting, and after each person has had time to digest what happened, meet with each of them, check how they're feeling, post the meeting and how satisfied they are with the agreed solutions that you discussed at the meeting. Most importantly, keep them accountable to the agreed solutions. So you need to put it back on them. What are they going to do? And each time you follow up, just make sure you're checking in on those actions and consistently review, and not just one person, but doing those individual meetings. You might have to do another session together, just to ensure both people, in their minds, the conflict is fully resolved, and all the remedial action is carried out, and we can move forward. So just to talk a bit more about that meeting. So again, this approach is built on evidence-based principles of restorative justice and allows the team to talk about what has been happening from their perspective, acknowledge the barriers and distractions to working well together, understand how these barriers and distractions affect people and prevent cooperation, determine what needs to be done to make working in the team better. They sign up to a plan, as we'll see here. We document that, and they take the responsibility for delivering on that plan. So that's the steps here that we go through at the meeting, just being really careful about the language we use in that meeting. Want to be a very open conversation. We're looking ideally for win-win outcomes. But sometimes it does end up in compromise depending on what the situation is. But what we really want to do is focus on what the key issues are, giving them both time to talk, and then finding some common ground that we can work from to find a path forward. Okay, so just some other follow-up tips on what we just discussed. So, act immediately, confront the issue in a private environment. Active listening, we talked about avoiding any accusatory language from any party involved, and that's where you often set some rules, or just be really clear on that. Framing concerns as observations, we're not judging. Define problem issue in terms of the needs of individuals. Brainstorm possible solutions, decide together on the solutions, finding that common ground. Make a plan in terms of who's going to do what, implement the plan, and then constantly evaluate how it's working in the review. So that really is the 3-step method of conflict resolution. So it's really thought out. It's really about understanding root cause of the issue, making sure everyone's heard, and making sure everyone is invested in the plan moving forward. So we'll cover off on some dealing with difficult personalities. So you need to be prepared, because there will be some difficult people and challenges that you may face in conflict resolution. So managing uncooperative participants, it is not unusual for employers to attempt to delay or avoid participating in conflict resolution, including claiming to have a full day of work engagements and being too busy, continually cancelling, taking leave, taking sick leave, raising strongly worded concerns about the process, claiming to be waiting for legal advice maybe, or claiming that their union rep or support person is currently unavailable. Really, those last 2 points, if we're at that point, we may be looking more at a dispute or some other situation. In terms of reluctant employees, you can manage that by clearly explaining the conflict resolution process and asking them to agree to it, and really selling the benefits of why we're doing it. It's positive, it should be constructive. So yeah, and if they're going away from the agreement, then we really need to remind them back and maybe bring them back to the agreement that we had. giving them an opportunity to raise any concerns that they may have, and really building rapport by being respectful and professional at all times. If they say they're too busy or keep cancelling, make sure you talk to the manager to ensure they do have the time. Reinforce that conflict resolution is important and needs to be addressed for all involved, and that nothing will improve if nothing is done. You can direct, obviously, to conflict resolution, but the concern there, if they're directed to participate in conflict resolution or mediation, then often it's not very positive or useful if they don't want to be there. So as their manager, if you are their manager, ensure they've got enough time to be involved, avoiding distractions, and answering any questions they have about the process. If you've got a hostile or aggressive employee, most importantly, which I know is often difficult, is you need to remain calm and professional. You need to work through the hostility and minimise any risk of exacerbating their emotional response. When an employee appears overcome by strong emotions, break the meeting. If at any time you or anyone else feels unsafe, then just end the meeting. You can come back to it or not. Keep a professional distance as the person responsible for the conflict resolution, not being overly familiar. Ensure your communications not refer to any personal matters that you know about. Remain aware that at some stage, worst case, that the communication may be read by a third party if it moves to some sort of dispute or something else. So just need to be considerate of that. So mediation and third-party interventions. Sometimes you might get to the point that, or depending on who it involves, often where we see this is if you've got some senior people and you think they're in need of a mediation, then that will often go to a third party to bring in the expertise around that and the independence. We haven't spoken about it because it's not, and I think I did it on last month's webinar about workplace investigations, but looking where you go to mediation versus investigation. Mediation, like we said, is about that conflict between two people, and really formal mediation looks at what we just said before. I'm a nationally accredited mediator, so it's that model has come from that, where we do the briefing session with the individual parties before to really understand their issues, bringing the parties together and then documenting an agreement and follow-up. So that's what an independent mediator is going to do. The difference is that they're very trained in that, they're experienced and they're independent. And I think it's really important if you don't have that expertise internally or it's a high stakes mediation. So just thinking about that. So on the positive and proactive side, we want to create a conflict resilient workplace. So the high costs, time and money associated with workplace conflict is considerable, as you know, and we spoke about all the downsides before. So Queensland government research shows that up to 30% of a typical manager's time is spent dealing with disputes and conflicts. The Office of Industrial Relations Queensland Workers' Comp Scheme from 21, little old, shows that site claims totaled 118 million, with the average claim costing 55,000, which is twice that of a physical injury. With the 5,500 accepted claims, 5,500 accepted claims, the average duration to resolve them, so to get people back to work or for permanent to exit, finish the claim, is 168 days. So that is a very long time in comparison to the physical injuries. Whereas the Australian Human Rights Commission reports workplace bullying costs between 6 and 36, big range, billion of dollars every year. That is workplace bullying, but conflicts often lead to bullying that hasn't been managed, unfortunately. So these figures highlight the importance for workplaces to take the issue of workplace conflict very seriously. To minimise the costs associated with conflicts, employers need to recognise the concept of the employee voice by encouraging employees to voice their concerns as early as possible. We want to create a culture that allows that to happen. If employees don't feel supported by management or that their complaints will be dealt with, or their complaints won't be dealt with fairly, they are likely to exercise their exit voice, in which they will call in sick regularly, stop performing to their best ability, or resign. maybe after submitting a complaint, whether that be a workers' comp claim, a bullying claim, unfair dismissal, constructive dismissal, whatever that might look like. As any manager will attest, the cost to replace an employee, as we all know, is very high versus trying to do the right thing and retain them from the beginning. So let's talk about these forms of early intervention. It's less costly compared to losing people and having to defend claims. It's the fastest way to help reduce conflict impacting the workplace. So strategies, as we've got listed here for early intervention, include all employees training in dispute resolution. All employees should be trained in their obligations under policies such as your code of conduct, discrimination, sexual harassment, health and safety. They should be trained in how to have difficult conversations, including communication and listening skills. They should have training on how to be an active upstander, which we'll talk about, and what appropriate intervention looks like and what they could be doing. Leader training in dispute resolution and management. So leaders should be trained in encouraging employees to raise issues, mental or psych risks that exist within workplace, discrimination, sexual harassment, health, safety, and how to lead and identify issues and manage them, how to have and facilitate difficult conversations and dealing with conflict, communication and listening skills, de-escalating strategies, and importantly, they need to document and record keep and understand what that means. One-on-one discussions between employees. So what we want to do, it involves implementing policies and training that support skills related to employees having difficult conversations with each other. So it's not reliant on the manager or the HR person to get involved, but we give everyone the skills to be able to maybe understand their conflict style, all the conflict styles, and then how to resolve their own conflicts if it becomes a problem. So the nature of the issue needs to be suitable for raising as a one-on-one discussion. So, which we understand that's not the case of bullying harassment potentially, but both parties need to be willing to interact openly and respectfully, but we need to give them the opportunity and the encouragement to do that. I spoke earlier about active upstander. Active upstander is someone who witnesses a behaviour that could lead to something high risk or harmful and makes the choice to intervene to make things better. Training employees to be active upstanders has the advantages of less conflict in the long run and greater engagement. This approach is particularly important for instances of bullying, harassment, different from conflict, and will go a long way in fostering positive cultural changes throughout the workplace. And we've already discussed that you might early intervention, if you don't have the skills, capacity or capability or time internally, then you may want to look at going external for a mediator or conciliator to help with the situation. Okay, so as a reminder, conflict is inevitable. Conflict is difficult to manage, but with the clear 3-step conflict resolution process to follow, it will help you achieve the best possible outcome. So listening to understand the problems, explore and agree solutions for the problems, and review how both people are feeling post the conflict resolution meeting. So you as the business leader need to be the ultimate conflict resolution expert within your organisation. So really practicing and honing these skills and the structured approach that comes with that. In summary, when we manage conflict in a positive way, it can result in both parties being satisfied with the outcome, helping to effectively manage any further conflict, having a deeper appreciation and understanding of each other, and continuing to work together in harmony, achieving improved productive outcomes. Above all, be soft on the person and hard on the problem, because it is here about the emotion and the belief of individuals, not anyone doing anything wrong. It's about bringing normally two people together to help them, give them the skills, but the framework to resolve conflict at work. Something for you to think about, your action plan. Think about a current conflict situation you're currently experiencing or a potential conflict you can see arising from today's webinar and the content. Maybe identify 3 actions you would like to follow to achieve a win-win solution. By employing the techniques and the methods outlined today, you'll be better equipped to handle and resolve conflicts, hopefully, in the office setting. Harnessing these skills will lead to improved team dynamics, high morale, and increased overall productivity. In terms of what Harrison's can help with, so it can definitely help with delivering the training that we outlined, developing of your policies, including your code of conduct, external mediation, and we do investigation as well if that's where it leads to. So, thank you for listening. If we can help with anything in regard to conflict resolution, please give us a call if you have any questions about the content covered today.